Hello, welcome to Postcolonial Space. I'm Masood Raja, and this is a brief response video, just impromptu, to a query that a subscriber to our channel has sent me through our Facebook page. And the query is about his master's or her, I don't know the gender, the name is kind of gender neutral, is about the master's thesis, which is about the direct impact of IMF policies on Jamaican educational policy, and then as a consequence, its impact on the students from marginalized communities. Now, this could be pertinent to Jamaica, but you can apply it to any developing nation which owes money to the IMF. So, the things to keep in mind, and you can watch my videos on neoliberalism to expand my my idea of what I suggest and then read further. But the problem with all IMF loans isn't that they're inherently unjust or whatever. The problem is that they are short-term loans, right? And because they are short-term loans and they are offered with a lot of strings attached to developing nations, because any nation that is cash strapped goes to IMF to take these loans, right? So then when any government wants to come and says we want to do poverty alleviation, we want to invest in long-term education, IMF gets the right to say no. That's a long-term expenditure. You cannot spend our money on it because that's a short-term loan. Plus, you cannot also spend money from your budget on it because your first responsibility is to create fiscal policy that ensures and secures our loan, right? That is how the developing nations are entrapped into this vice of debt, right? Now let's go to Jamaica. How would it impact their educational policy? So first of all, IMF can dictate to them these are the educational sectors in which you can invest. These are the ones in which you cannot because they are long term, right? That means that the government then builds an education policy that privileges certain subjects over others. What could be those subjects? STEM disciplines or disciplines that are integrated with global economic system. So that means humanities would be left behind because they are non-developmental, or anything that is long term and that says, oh, there are a lot of poor students, we want to create programs for them. IMF mandates, direct and indirect, would kind of make sure that the government doesn't get to do that, right? So that's the first thing to keep in mind. So now, if IMF gets to tell you what to spend your money on, what is permissible expenditure, what is not, they're already curtailing any native initiative, local initiative that you might have in terms of education. Within education, then you will internalize this imperative that we need to fund STEM disciplines or business schools and not humanities, right? And then since you cannot do long term remedial care or care for the poor, right? The policies are going to impact the poor far too much than the upper middle classes or the rich. Because most of the times, the care of the poor or the disenfranchised communities is left to the government. It's government's job to equalize the resources so that those who may not have any material resources can also rise high through their hard work. It is that ability of the government that is highly impeded within the neoliberal order, right? Because the idea, the mythology is that if you let businesses grow and let rich people keep more money, they'll invest more money and wealth will trickle down. So IMF, by its very nature, discourages long-time government interventions into the care of the poor or poverty alleviation. It's not because they hate the poor, it's because for them, their primary task is to safeguard their investment, and the only way they can do that is by telling these governments who owe them money as to what is non-developmental expenditure and what is long-term expenditure, and force them to invest in things that would return money so that these governments can pay the interest on their loans. So, to answer your question, if postcolonial studies is your framework for your master's thesis, I would start by first describing your understanding of neoliberalism, your understanding of general theory of neoliberalism, how is it practiced, how does IMF work, right? Then go to Jamaica and give us the story. It was in 1973 when everyone went to IMF because of the Arab oil embargo, right? Everyone was cash strapped. That's when Jamaica gets entrapped into the IMF loan. Then point out how much of their national budget is set aside to pay the interest on that loan. And then you can argue what is the larger educational budget, how much of it is given to the universities and school systems, and if within that, is there even some space for the disenfranchised, or the budget already excludes them from any processes of redemption and care, right? So that could be an ideal project if it's a social sciences project. Now, if it's a humanities project, then you could take the same knowledge and go to some novels and stories that have been written in the last 30, 40 years and argue your point and show us the representations of that. How are the stories of those people told, right? But don't just represent these people as passive recipients of international aggression. They also offer resistances. They also form communities, right? They also come together to fight against this oppression. What is the story of that, right? That could also be your argument. Now, I already referred to you in my comments, Camille, to John Rapley, his work on globalization, Chomsky's essays on profit over people. Those are the early critiques of neoliberalism. Joseph Stiglitz's work. You can combine those discussions on a general scale, then come to the specifics of Jamaica, and then within that, within the disciplinary boundaries, if you want to work with the plight of the poor or what is happening, then that framework can enable you not just to point out what they are missing or what is being denied to them, but are they being mobilized because of this new economic system? Are they becoming radical? And if they are they turning towards religion? Are they turning towards fundamentalist radicalism, right? And that is an outcome of neoliberal policies. Okay, so these are some of my general ideas. I'm sorry I can't offer much, but I hope this would be helpful to you particularly, but also generally to anyone else who is struggling with this idea. How do I cobble together a theory, a body of text, and make an argument? So, rough answer to that is you study theory to understand the larger system, then you have your questions that you want to answer or ask, and then you use the theory to answer that question or to ask that question, right? Pretty simple. I mean, I know I make it sound simple, but that is how I do it. That is how I try to teach it. I hope this was helpful to you. Let me know what you think. I'll try to record more lectures on this, but do keep in mind that I do have a whole playlist on how to write and research and organize a paper or a thesis. I highly encourage you to watch it. It may not be specific to your field of study, but general principles are the same. That's all. Thank you so much. I hope all of you are staying safe. You all take care, and I will now see you next time. Until then, as always, peace and love.